So, was Johnny Appleseed actually a terrorist?
The government was like, your tree is too big and it's interfering with the right of way and you have to remove it. And it was like a super old, like redwood or something. They're super majestic and
Oh,
like
when it's been around for
ancient.
hundreds of years and things, yeah.
Yeah. Went to the governor's house or something and like planted a bunch of redwood seeds in the yard. And it's like, so like by the time you see the tree, the roots are so like in there that like,
Established. Yep.
yeah.
Well, we don't put MSG in, but we do put monosodium glutamate in.
Oh, we thought you meant Michael Schenker group. Yeah, we don't have any of this 80s hair metal in here, but we do have monosodium glutamate.
Okay, welcome to another kitchen sink microscopy. I'm Eric Rosenblatt, and we'd love it if you like and share the video, subscribe to the channel, leave comments down there if you want. I don't know. It's a good thing to do.
Yes, I do indeed wholeheartedly concur.
Simple yes would have sufficed, number one.
Casey Rochford's the name, music's the game. Listen to it at the end of the episode, and you will be razzled and dazzled. I guarantee it.
Hopefully not frazzled.
Fraggle Rock. So, what are we talking about tonight?
Well, we were just talking about how we hadn't done like any kind of too many in the category of tomfoolery as like a whole episode. Yeah, should throw in the picture of those buck teeth there, like. So I just thought, oh well, I'll just grab one of the things that I had in my bucket for tomfoolery, and I think this one might be kind of interesting and might go down a couple different paths. So, was Johnny Appleseed actually a terrorist?
Oh, that's an interesting one. Almost as interesting as, do you really have a tomfoolery bucket? Like an actual bucket just sitting there?
Actual, it's a you know a spot in a document.
Is it slimy in there?
Like, it might be, and I might be kind of into that actually.
Oh God, demonetized. I don't know why. Johnny Appleseed, terrorist.
Yeah, spreading seeds, apple seeds all over the place. Apple trees popping up everywhere. In your backyard, in your front yard, like all over.
I do have to say I don't know if this actually happened or not. I saw this like meme of somebody that was like an arborist or something, like super passionate about trees and everything. And the government was like, your tree is too big and it's interfering with the right of way and you have to remove it. And it was like a super old, like redwood or something. Something you don't really want to fuck with. They're super majestic and
like, when it's been around ancient. For hundreds of years and things.
Yeah. And so he like went to the governor's house or something and like planted a bunch of redwood seeds in the yard. And it's like, so like by the time you see the tree, the roots are so like in there that like
established.
Yep. Yeah.
Well, and there's people who do I think they call it seed bombing. So they make these little balls of seeds with nutrients and stuff and toss them in places. So just boom, all of a sudden wildflower is growing, or it could be weeds. You never know. I thought about that as like, to counter back in the day when, marijuana was illegal and all this stuff. I thought, well, the way to fix that is to just seed bomb everywhere. So it's just growing wild, like all over everywhere. And you just
like the governor's mansion.
Exactly. Yeah. Like,
Oh,
what are
the
you gonna do?
governor's growing pot, huh?
Yeah. Well, imagine if marijuana plants were like as common as dandelions or something. Like they're just everywhere. Like, what are you gonna do then? You know, it's
Cobra
like
man.
Cobra Man, they're in my backyard, man. I don't know how they got here, but yeah,
Why am I late to work? Well, let me tell you a story, man. No, that's interesting. Now I'm thinking like, are blackberry bushes like just a pissed off neighbor like seed bombing you? Like,
it, I'm not recommending people do that, but it would certainly be effective. Actually, the best is
huh.
bamboo. Once bamboo is established, you cannot get rid of it. Like, it takes a huge amount of effort.
And it like
Because
grows through everything.
yes, yeah, so it's a grass. So it grows through sending out like runners under the ground that pop up into more and more uh, plants, essentially shoots that come up.
Mhm.
But so it could be growing under the ground for like years, and you'd be like, oh, it's just a couple of little things, and all of a sudden, whoosh, it explodes, and it's coming out from under the sidewalk and busting its way through the walls and everything. Like, it's it's insidious stuff.
Yeah.
Um,
Super cool though. Like
oh, I love it. Yeah,
there
it's
was a trail on Maui, I think, where it was just like an alley of bamboo on either side, and you walk into it and it's so quiet all of a
yep.
sudden.
I
And
have bamboo on the side of my house, and I love it,
yeah.
even though it is a little out of control sometimes. But it, yeah, I mean, this idea though, if somebody like just kind of tossing seeds for big trees all over the place, like
Hmm.
imagine, I mean, you know, like just walking down the street throwing apple seeds into farmland and stuff, and all of a sudden you got trees everywhere. Like
So
you
like
said, it might be a while until you realize that it's a tree, and by
yeah.
then it might be too late.
So despite being a biologist, I was never super interested in horticulture realms of biology.
Hey,
So
you can lead a horticulture, but you can't make her think. Anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
but how I don't know, like virulent are apple trees really? Like do they grow so easily? Like can you just throw the seed and like not do anything special and it'll just turn into a fully fruiting apple tree?
I don't think so, and that's why, you know, the apples are there. The fruit surrounds the seeds and provides nutrients, like that goes into the soil and protects the seeds
Mhm.
and things like that. And I think if you just indiscriminately toss handfuls of apple seeds everywhere, I don't know if it would necessarily turn into a tree.
Right.
um, I mean, I suppose you could take the time and just poke them all into the ground and toss a little bit of like some kind of uh, nutrient juice on top of the spot or something, and that might work.
Huh.
But there's other things that could be similar that might grow a little easier.
So is Johnny Appleseed like a real
I
person?
think he's mythical. There, he might be based on an actual person, but it's like, isn't it like a
I don't
kid's,
remember.
like a little kid's poem or something like that? It's been a long time, but I just remember like, oh yeah, he would walk around, walk on the streets, just throwing out apple seeds everywhere.
Why would that be terrorism?
Well, because I mean, maybe not necessarily literally terrorism, because terrorism typically you have to have like a motivation behind there to like cause terror, you know, and
And something
usually,
that's actually like terrible. I mean, like,
well, I mean, yeah, I mean,
thanks for
typically,
the free fruit, bro. You know, like,
yeah,
I don't know.
but
Like,
it could, depending on where it lands, it could certainly cause a lot of problems. Like having a bunch of trees growing in certain places could be problematic.
hmm.
Um, or
Well, you
something like,
certainly wouldn't get any doctor visits, you know, because an apple a day and all
oh
that.
yeah, you'd be set, good to go then. You could have
Well,
freaking
I'd like to
fire
come
support.
and treat your cancer, but I'm afraid there's apple trees and
Yeah.
That's kryptonite for doctors, as we all know.
Exactly. Yep.
Sorry, you're going to die in 6 weeks. Yes.
Actually,
Sure.
that's an interesting one too. We could talk about that too.
Hmm.
Just that saying, an apple a day keeps the doctor away, which it's not like it, the way you were phrasing it, it's like it's garlic for vampires.
Right.
The idea is like apples are good for you, and you're going to be healthier if you consume apples, and therefore not need a doctor's visit.
Yeah.
I don't know how much truth there is to that,
I mean,
although maybe there could be.
it's allegorical, I think. Just kind of in general, trying to eat healthy, make sure you've got a balance of vitamins and minerals, and shit like that. And
well,
because I
scurvy
mean,
was a lot more common back in the day, so having fruit, especially citrus, but apples, I think, still have a little bit of that in there, vitamin C and stuff like that.
A little bit. I think the more color a fruit has, the more vitamin C. Like I just had some red cabbage with my steak and canoodle. And I saw it was pretty high in vitamin C. But yeah, like I think it's just a general idea of like, if your diet is good, generally your health will follow.
I think that is fair.
Mostly true. I
mean,
I'd like
say I mean, certainly a lot of problems that modern humans have health-wise do come from diet.
Yeah.
Like diet and also activity too. Like if you lead a sedentary life, then you're going to have all kinds of problems. But if you're active and you have a balanced diet, like I think you're less likely to have problems, like statistically considerably less likely.
Yeah. I definitely notice better health in Germany. Even when I just visited for a couple of weeks, I would notice better overall health. Like even when I was like sick here from the travel and stuff. Just in general, less access to processed foods and fast food in general is kind of rare.
And
McDonald's and Burger King is about all you'll find here.
And I think portion size is another factor that people don't have the same massive portions that we have in the US. Plus another thing too is like in the US, sugar is added to like everything. Lots and lots and lots of sugar. And I don't
specifically the high fructose corn syrup, which you don't really find here.
Nope.
At all, actually.
No, it's a very US thing.
Yeah,
it's interesting too, because there's all these conspiracy theories around high fructose corn syrup and everything, and maybe there's some truth to some extent, mostly, but I think it comes down to the fact that it's added to everything. Ketchup, full of high fructose corn syrup, like soda, obviously full of it, like, but even things you wouldn't expect, just high fructose corn syrup and everything.
It's not about addicting people. It's just cheaper, like.
Well, yeah. But maybe there's something to it. Maybe chemically it's a little different, and it may interact with the body a little bit differently. Not that it's like some kind of.
Oh, it does. Yeah.
Yeah. And because it's funny, because the industry itself put out a bunch of like, I guess you'd call them like propaganda ads saying it's just sugar, high fructose corn syrup. It's just sugar. And I saw those. I'm like, okay, well, if that's the case, then I ought to be able to buy it, because I can buy corn syrup, right? You can buy corn syrup all day long. Go into the store, there it is, bottles and bottles of it. So I was like, well, I should be able to buy high fructose corn syrup, right? In bottles to prepare food with. Nope, not sold anywhere except beekeeping. And they sell it in big drums. So it's food for bees, for your hive and stuff. But that's about it. Like you can't find it in like a normal consumer package.
I think that's for very good reason though, because it's so potent and so sweet. You don't need much of it. So
No.
like if you sold it to just the average person who would just slather it on their pancake, they wouldn't even like it. It would just taste nasty. Like if you just ate
Yeah.
like pure sweetness
But
in
maybe
that
maybe
volume.
for baking and stuff like that, maybe you could be using, it would work for that. You just use a little bit less. It would be a very efficient means of
Have
sweetening
you ever
something
baked
so
with
very.
actual just corn syrup though? Like
No, no,
it,
but I
like
mean,
that alone is pretty freaking potent.
yeah,
Um,
that's
but
true.
yeah, I mean, I,
It's just a
when it
weird
comes to
thing.
health and science and stuff like that, like it is really important to uh I really hate saying this, but like do your own research. Um
I think that no, no,
and I
you
mean
should.
real like research because and that includes like having an open mind to and pick your sources, right? Like so I used to be a huge proponent of Splenda, sucralose,
Mhm.
because it's effectively just a sugar molecule where they've removed the part where it binds to the receptors and you effectively just pee it out, right? So you don't metabolize any of the sweetness, but it's nowhere near as sweet as high fructose corn syrup. So it's like tolerable.
Mhm.
And so even though I'm a really thin guy and I have no weight problems to worry about whatsoever in the surplus category anyway, I would drink Coke Zero and stuff like that,
Yeah.
just as a flavor preference. And then a couple weeks ago, I saw that there was a study where it's probably cancer causing.
Hmm.
And right away, I was like, well, I can live without that, especially now
Yeah.
that I live in Germany and I can actually tolerate drinking Coke because it's cane sugar,
Yep.
just
Well,
like
that's the
Mexican Coke.
yeah. The Mexican Coke is I that's the only kind that I really like because yeah,
Hmm.
like everything is so sweet. It's just too sweet.
Yeah, too sticky and like
Yeah.
just, yeah,
And the,
like
the nice thing
a
about the Mexican Coke,
nasty film in your mouth and
oh
your
yeah.
throat. And it's like, yeah.
The cane sugar stuff though, it's like you can actually taste more of the actual flavor
Hmm.
instead of just it's sweet. Because
Yeah.
everything like you go to a fast food restaurant and everything, it all tastes like Kool-Aid. It's a bunch of sugar and
Yeah.
that's it. And that,
Well,
sugar, even the weight thing is one factor, but also just intake of sugar, like a high intake of sugar in general is just bad for you.
well, and specifically this high fructose corn syrup because it's like a type 2 diabetes nightmare.
Mm-hmm.
The overload that it creates in this you know fructose level, the amount of insulin you have to produce in order to handle all that uh floods your system with insulin in like way higher doses than a body really should experience on a semi-regular basis, or
Mm-hmm.
in some people's cases a super regular basis. And when you have all that insulin, the production facilities in your body say, oh, we've got enough insulin, we don't need to make any more. And then you go a few days without that, and all of a sudden your blood sugar is all fucked up,
Mm-hmm.
like, and you do enough of that and you end up with the type 2 diabetes problem,
Yeah, and it
which
makes me
is,
kind of wonder if there's a correlation between the implementation of high fructose corn syrup and this kind of, I guess, scourge of diabetes that
there
seems to be.
absolutely is.
Yeah.
And there's like people being super loud about that, but they aren't being heard. And if they are heard, people are like, yeah,
Yeah.
whatever. Like, eh, like,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't usually jump on those like health food bandwagons and stuff, but having moved to Germany now and really like not even altered my eating patterns so much, like I'll still even eat some pre-packaged stuff, but the way that the EU in general handles stuff when it comes to food is in a little bit more of a careful fashion. Too careful, I think.
Oh, for
Like
sure. But
uh
you go anywhere in the world, like the Mediterranean countries, the Middle East, things like
mhm.
that, the way they like prepare food is entirely different. And it's, yeah, I mean, I don't think it's just the things being processed and prepackaged, it's what's in it that really does factor in. Like, and the high fructose corn syrup, like I said, it is in everything,
Yeah.
every single product. So like you think, oh, I'm not going to drink any soda. Well, everything you eat has tons and tons of sugar in it. um so if you add soda on top of that, woof, man. Yeah, I mean, it's no wonder there's issues.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, like, and that's why I said people like, oh, authentic Chinese food just isn't as good as the Americanized Chinese food. And it's like, yeah, because they put tons of sugar in it in here in the US. That's how. So like,
uh,
that's the difference.
Salt, really, like
Huh?
monosodium glutamate.
Oh yeah, MSG too, which there was a whole scare over that. Like, oh, that's so bad for you, and then come to find out it's really not that bad for you. But again, being like a salt, essentially, it's not necessarily probably something you want to take in
Too
large
much salt
quantity.
is definitely bad for the body, for the heart specifically.
Mm-hmm.
And the problem with MSG is that monosodium. It breaks off super easy and just gets into your system, and that's how you end up with like congestive heart failure and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So it is bad.
Well, I
Now
mean,
you've got to eat like Americanized Chinese food every day,
yeah,
even the stuff that says no MSG, right? Like,
it's still trace amounts.
right.
Uh-huh. Yep. uh, well, we don't put MSG in, but we do put monosodium glutamate in. Oh,
Oh, we thought you meant Michael Schenker Group. Yeah, we
yeah.
we don't have any of this 80s hair metal in here, but
Yep.
we do have
Uh,
monosodium glutamate, so it
mhm.
tastes good. Yeah.
Exactly. Well, yeah, and I think that's the thing. It's like it's moderation. And really, I think probably one of the biggest problems with the US uh, is the culture of huge portion sizes and the culture of like, oh, clean your plate, got to eat it all. Whatever is there, you got to eat it all. Like, well, I
Yeah.
don't think that's a good idea. Maybe we just eat until we're kind of full, and maybe we don't need to eat meals per se. I don't. Humans aren't like, we never did that
Yeah.
a long time ago. We're not necessarily engineered to stuff ourselves on a regular basis, like 3 times a day. I think it's healthier, and maybe this might be reflected in some studies and things, but I think it's healthier to just eat periodically throughout the day when you're a little hungry. Like, oh, yeah, have like a little bit here, a little bit there, and that's it.
Yeah, that definitely does increase metabolism. Um, yeah, on an evolutionary standpoint, I think that's something that was probably always beneficial, but I don't think that we necessarily came up on that, because food was always something you had to work for pretty hard. So
Mm.
it's not like you could have 5 small meals a day when you're out in the grass fields hunting for food, or
Well,
like,
you would forage. So
yeah.
you have your maybe like your hunt where you're hunting for meat, but then all the rest of the while you're foraging. So, oh, look,
Mhm.
a patch of berries. We'll all have some berries, and then collect a few to dry out, and then oh, there's these plants that we can eat that are tasty, and we'll eat some of those, and small things here, small things there. I think that is much more in line with the way our biology is engineered.
Hmm.
And even then, like the whole, you would feast every once in a while, right? Oh, we took down the wildebeest or something, and everybody eats really good for a couple of days, and then now there's like a week without anything. And I think it's evident in that how long we can survive without food. Like we can go almost a month without food, no problem. But like water, 3 days, I think, is what that's the max. It's the rule of threes, I think, like 3 minutes without air, 3 hours without shelter, like in the cold, 3 days without water, and 30 days without food.
Is it
That's
that long?
Yeah,
Yeah, I suppose so.
that sounds about right. Well, and I've actually just for part of my like prepping practice, I've kind of gotten into the habit of just not eating periodically. Like I'll just like, maybe I'll have like a couple of crackers, and that's all I eat the whole entire day.
Mm.
And going longer and longer and longer without eating, and trying to overcome that feeling of hunger, um, because that can cause you to do some pretty stupid things. Um,
Oftentimes, just drinking water
mhm.
is more than sufficient to satiate hunger.
Yeah.
Uh,
Oh, I drink tons of water, like all the time. It's like I love it. And which
Yeah,
is funny because I used to hate drinking water when I was a kid. I was all
yeah,
about
me
all
too.
this
Yeah.
sweet stuff and like sugary things and candy. And now it's like, my birthday was not that long ago, and my dad was like, "Oh, you want a cake?" And I'm like, "Not really." I sweet stuff just every once in a while, maybe like a couple of things, like it used to be if I had a pack of candy, like those orange slices with the sugar on them. I loved those things. And I would get a whole pack and I would eat a whole pack in one sitting. And now I'll get a package of those and I might have like three or four and then put it aside and forget about it for a few days and like, oh yeah, I got those things and I'll have a couple more.
Right.
And I think that's good. Like
Hmm.
I also don't eat large portions at all. Like when I eat, I'll have like a small amount of something, like a couple slices of pizza or something, or like one burger if I go to a fast food place, and that's it. Like, and that might even be the entire day's food.
Yeah, that sort of thing takes conditioning. Like you have to really try to do that. Um,
That's
you
true,
know,
but it's
like
something that's achievable.
if you've gotten into that rut of like overeating or the whole finish your plate thing, like the finish your plate thing has always bugged me. Even as a little kid, my grandma would be like, eat all your food because there's starving kids in Africa. And I was like, well, package my leftovers up and ship them over there. But good luck, like not getting moldy, I guess.
Yeah,
Like,
I
like
mean, I
what good
understand.
does that philosophy do?
You're correct in that, but I understand the sentiment of like appreciate the
Yeah.
bounty that we have because a lot of people don't have that.
Yeah, but if you're not hungry, you shouldn't be eating anymore.
Yes. You know how much food we waste in this country? How much food
Mhm.
is thrown away? Maybe if we were a little bit more conservative in how much we ate, we wouldn't have so much waste. You know, like
Yeah.
that's a thing. Not that you could necessarily take what's left over and just ship it to places where people could use it. Maybe with the proper storage and processing, you could probably do some of that. Um, but the demand, we're producing a lot of food and a lot of it goes to waste. And I don't
Yeah.
think that's a good thing, especially meat. You got to think about this. Like meat that gets thrown away makes me sad because that was a living thing once. And while I don't have a problem eating meat, like I do have a problem with throwing it away because it's basically like you're taking something that was alive and you're throwing it in a dumpster. Like that just isn't right. And I think if we all adopt that kind of attitude about it, like we'd be a lot more appreciative and selective. Like, hey, maybe only eat a little bit, you know?
This is why we need lab grown meat. Like
Yes.
there's no like chemical difference at all. You don't have to worry about having actual blood or all the bacteria that comes with it. Nothing has to die. You
Yeah.
know, like there, like you solve all these problems, but oh God, it's scary because it's a laboratory. Like,
Well, and for now, it would be laboratory grown, but it'll be industrially manufactured in the future. And it'll be no different than any other manufactured product, basically. And I have no problem with lab grown meat.
it's funny
Like,
that you just call it like something different, even though it's the same process. Like lab grown, industry grown, same thing,
yeah.
you know, different
Well,
location.
different location, and maybe one is a little more experimental because, like right now, that type of meat is extremely costly.
Well, the
Um,
lab is like going to be safer, if
well,
anything.
sure,
Like
but it'll be
your controlled parameters and everything, like super clean environment and
sure, but industrial processes will eventually be that way too because they have standards as well for
Mhm.
production, mass
Mhm.
production, and things. I mean, mass production can also be inherently safe in its own right. Um,
Can be, yeah.
yeah, and I mean, but that's what will need to happen for something like that to be adopted. It needs to end up ultimately being cheaper because, like, animals are very, very expensive to raise and the process and things
Oh
like
yeah.
all of that massive expenses. But if you could like come up with an industrial process whereby you put all the ingredients in and out comes basically meat. Also, you can custom tailor things, like you can make only the best cuts of meat through this process. Um, I don't see a problem with it. I think it's like a that's the direction we should be going in. Although it will mean potentially certain farm animals kind of going extinct because we bred them to
I was
be.
just thinking about that, and it that's an interesting thought experiment because I was like, would that be a bad thing? If cows and chickens and pigs in the way that they exist now went extinct, would it be so bad? Because could they really survive in the wild anymore? We've selected for them to be food.
Yeah,
That's it.
and maybe that's their time. Like it's time
Like
for
that's
you to rest.
their raison d'etre. Like that's that's
Yeah.
it. You know, you take
Well,
that
yeah, they're
away,
not.
like
We've taken something for, and this is millennia on too. So we've been doing this for a very very long time, taking things that were able to survive easily on their own and adjusted them to
yeah.
be more food like to us, like the features that we want, more meat, fattier, whatever that kind of thing.
For tens of generations, if you lived in and died in slavery, and suddenly you were just like, okay, go fend for yourself. We don't need you anymore. Uh, maybe
It
you would just
probably
rather die. Like,
maybe. Well, I think there probably might be um animals would probably be able to those farm animals would survive in some instances. Like chickens, for instance. The wild chickens are a thing in some cities.
mhm.
Like chickens running all over the place, just laying eggs and intermingling with humans and everything. I mean, that they could probably still survive. Um, it just depends, I guess.
Yeah.
But certainly the numbers would decrease. Um, and I would imagine there'd be still like boutique farms that would produce actual chicken and beef and things like that for those
I
who
mean,
want it.
the
But
wild chickens exist because they thrive just fine, though. You know,
yeah,
like so. I mean that does show you like they'd be fine. I'm talking more about like the cows and stuff, though. Like
mhm.
they wouldn't really
Well,
last against predators so well.
yeah,
And
because like coyotes and things like that hunt them, and the farmers
yeah,
protect them.
yeah.
So because obviously it's kind of like important that they not get slaughtered by predators.
Hmm.
Um, So yeah, if you just kind of let them out, and uh, that you never know, they might adapt. I'm sure some will. You know, cows probably wouldn't necessarily go extinct, but certainly the ones that we know today would not be here in like
Yeah.
100 years.
And their immune systems. I mean, if they're not getting these like antibiotics and stuff like that, like they'd be wiped out by disease like in no time flat, you know.
That's true. So that's the implication of replacing, even if we do lab grown meat, or if we do like a meat alternative, like some kind of vegan something or other. Um, Actually, that's an interesting question. Funny how this all started from Johnny Appleseed.
Right.
um, so would oh man, this is almost like its own lightning round topic. Like, so if we had lab grown meat, right, that was never an animal, uh, would vegetarians or vegans be okay with that then?
I would hope so. um I mean, obviously, like individual tastes will differ. Like you might just not like the taste of meat,
Yeah.
which I wouldn't fault anyone for. But if it's purely an ethical thing, which I think is tends to be more of a vegan thing than a vegetarian thing.
Yeah.
But there is some crossover. Um, yeah, if you remove that ethical quandary, like why not eat the lab grown meat then?
Yeah.
Because therein you have an easy and simple single source of all essential amino acids, which I guarantee you 95% of vegetarians are not nitpicky enough with their diet to completely provide all the amino acids they need to be fully healthy.
Well, I mean, we are omnivores, so
Yeah,
that we have
being
to,
strictly vegetarian is not inherently healthy.
unless you're like a brontosaurus or something,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, like I mean, I'm sorry to say, but like just being a vegetarian does not mean you're healthy. You have to be a very strict, very like knowledgeable vegetarian
Yeah, fill in all
in order to like
blanks.
have like an optimized body.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if you're an omnivore, your body like is pretty much optimal with the least amount of effort.
Mm-hmm. That's true. Well, yeah, and I think removing those ethical concerns, yeah, it would be acceptable to the, except for those who just don't like it. Like, there's a few things I don't like: onions, shredded coconut, and I actually don't really like steaks. Like, sometimes
I
I've
had
had a
steak twice today. But
sometimes,
it's rare, you know. I don't
yeah,
often.
it's
I
just
mean,
like,
I
I don't
didn't
know.
cook it rare. It's rare that I eat
Yeah,
it.
yeah. If usually I like charred stuff.
Mm.
Like things, the more charred the better. Like, I'm the one who keeps the hot dog in the fire at the campsite for the longest until it's like black on the outside, and like that. That's how I love it.
Carcinogens.
Yeah. Oh man. But anyway, yeah, I don't understand people's aversion to the lab grown meat thing. Like, that just, I think it comes down to like people not really understanding many things and forming conclusions based on like very limited information. And when they go looking, they find all these people who are saying a bunch of nonsense about stuff.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God, oh, like, genetic modification, GMOs. I gotten
Uh,
in many, many arguments with people over GMOs because I'm like, it's not anything different than we've
so
been doing for thousands of years, man.
so I just read something recently that I want to point out about GMOs. If you remember, the EU like banned GMOs 10-ish years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And just recently, they've completely reversed on that. They're like, oh, these are actually good. So like now it's all cool and they're all like into researching it and stuff. And they're removing barriers to make it easier to research and cheaper to, you know, process and stuff like that. So like
Yeah.
finally they've kind of seen the light. And
Well, that's one of
that
the
was something everybody pointed to in America. They were like, we need to be labeling things with GMOs and banning GMOs because Europe does it.
Mhm. Well, that's
And
one of the
all the
problems
while
with
I was like, well, yeah, Europe might be smart about some things, but that's dumb. Like,
that's one of the problems with like central management too, is like you can have these kinds of effects, widespread effects very easily, that may or may not be good. Like you just like, and if it's
mhm,
a stupid thing, well, it's stupid for everybody. Like that's
yeah.
not the way we should be doing things.
But you know, like it's super laudable that the EU is able to like reverse its position on things.
Which is
Whereas,
like it's that's appropriate for like
yeah,
science, you
yeah,
know, like people, there were conclusions about things, scientific things that turned out to not be right, and
yeah.
you know things change, like,
And
oh
that and
well, we were wrong
yeah,
about
that's
that.
why I wanted to point that out. You know, I want to like give them props and be like, good for you. You know, I'm not gonna be like, oh, look at you, you were idiots or anything. It's more like finally you've kind of like,
That's a good thing. I, you know,
yeah,
I'll give credit where credit's due for that at least.
yeah,
But the thing is, it should never have even gotten to that point in the first place. Like, it would
yeah,
have been very easy to like research this,
yeah,
come to a more rational conclusion. Now, caution is fine. Maybe say, hey, we don't know a whole lot about this yet, but we're going to look into it. In the meantime, it'll be a iffy thing. Like, we'll see how this works, but we don't want to spread any panic or alarm, you know, like,
you
and
don't want to spread any panic or alarm.
so because that's the thing, it's like if they just outright ban stuff, then it does seem that way. It's like, oh my god, this must be bad, until it happens so
Mhm,
often. It's like the boy who
mhm.
cried wolf, like California, you know, everything causes cancer in California. So when you see that label, like, psh, of course I dismiss it, like, well, everything causes cancer according to
Yeah.
California. But so it's like maybe they need to be a little more discriminatory about what
Breathing
they label.
oxygen has been shown to cause cancer. You should hold your breath.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Well, you can't get cancer if you're dead.
Cells can't grow if you're dead.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
yeah. I don't know. Like there is an abundance of caution in well in Germany at least. You can't even buy like Tums or ibuprofen at a store. Like you got to go to a pharmacy and often have a prescription for some of this stuff. Like
Wow.
that is totally innocuous. Like and you know, my wife is constantly like, "Oh, can I take this like with this thing?" And I'll you know go and look it up because I've you know got the wherewithal and the education and the resources to like look into contraindications and things like that. And everything, of course, will be tickety boo
Mm.
as you know, like that's the one good thing America does is safety. Like we have a really good balance in like just enough safety, but also being like relaxed enough with the things that we've come to know as being safe.
Yeah, a
So
little bit of
like
leeway, basically.
yeah, when it comes to safety, like I will always side with what the US has kind of determined
Mhm.
scientifically.
It
Um
tends, I mean, it's not perfect, but it does tend to be pretty okay.
yeah, yeah, like for all the faults the FDA might have, like it really is like the best at that. Like because I mean, let's face it, you can't test every pill.
No.
So yeah, like when people are like, you know, they only test like every 100 pills or something. Well, it's like, yeah, I mean, Can you imagine how expensive it would be if you paid somebody to sit there and test every single pill and then repackage it after they've handled it and like introduced all these potential errors and
Mhm.
like dangers and stuff? Like, no, you don't want any of that. You have to find the balance between, reasonably assured safety and like fucking it up by putting too many cooks in the kitchen.
Well, yeah, and efficiency too.
Hmm.
Like, because think of how long it would take if they were to look at every single little thing.
Right. Yeah.
Like, the what's the organization, the one that the meat one, right? What?
USDA.
USDA. Yeah. Like,
Yeah.
they don't look at every single piece of meat that's processed. They take a few samples here and there.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's probably about as good as you could do. But
Yeah.
given the numbers, it's like, okay, if like only 5 steaks a day were being sold, okay, sure, they could inspect every single one. But there's like billions, so it's like, how are you going
Yeah.
to do
Like
that? They only
like
have
that
so many people.
method. Yeah, that method works with mass production. That method works with science. That method works with pretty much everything except humans. So the TSA doing that sort of thing, like
That
randomly selecting people and thinking you're weeding out terrorism, that does not work.
no.
But when it comes to the FDA and like randomly testing food and drugs and things like that, yeah,
Well,
it
because
works
because the
well enough.
sure, because the issues that arise would be systemic. So like you'd
Yeah.
have a bunch of cattle that are infected with something, and so by randomly sampling, you'd
Mhm.
pull that out and be like, "Whoa, wait a minute, we got a problem." Or if
Yep.
there's some process in a manufacturing system that's like not working right, and you would notice that because it would be the whole entire batch would be the same, and there'd be some kind of flaw. Like, so yeah, it works. But yeah, you're right. It doesn't work for the TSA. Like, because that doesn't how it's not like there's batches of terrorists that come streaming in and everybody's contaminated with the terrorism gene or something like that.
Oh, we've got to recall Afghanistan.
Yeah. Man, it's
We
so
found
crazy.
terrorism there. So
We ended up at the TSA from Johnny Appleseed. How about that?
right.
That's
Yeah, we
insane.
we were
Actually,
like,
but
we
it's
never talk about tomfoolery, and then we got into science and
yeah.
politics.
But I mean, it kind of works because the question originally was Johnny Appleseed a terrorist? So
Yeah,
there we
that's
go.
right.
Hey,
That's right.
there's a new thing for the TSA to check for. Hey, do you got a bunch of apple seeds in your pocket? You might just be a terrorist.
Well, that's already not allowed. You can't
Oh,
bring fruit products. Which what? Like
well, okay, maybe seeds are different, but I there's a reason for that. What is it? In Washington State, we have the apple maggot
quarantines.
quarantine
Yeah.
area,
Mhm.
because that is bad.
Yeah.
If that,
But it's like that everywhere. It's not just
yeah,
Washington. Like Hawaii has the same thing,
exactly.
and yeah, like that does actually kind of make sense, but not from a terrorism standpoint.
No, 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 not at all.
I'm an apple terrorist. I'm
Uh,
bringing maggots to Oregon.
I don't have any fruit, but I've got a whole bag full of these maggots here. I'm gonna toss on the fruit.
I remember being a kid and seeing this apple maggot quarantine sign on the freeway somewhere. I was like, what the fuck?
Yeah, I had a similar reaction when I was a
Yeah.
kid too. Oh man, God.
Well, that's a good place to end, I think, coming full circle to
Full
from
circle.
apples to terrorism. Uh,
Hmm. Yeah.
only on kitchen sink microscopy can we link apples and terrorism.
Oh man, well, hopefully all you enjoyed it as much as we did talking about it.
Yeah, who would have thought Johnny Appleseed would turn into an awesome episode?
We have the Midas touch, I think, or maybe
Indeed.
it's the Midas minds. Yeah, that's it.
Indeed.
Yes. Well, on that note, thanks for sticking it out with us. And enjoy the song on the way out. It might be something you haven't heard before, hopefully. And have a good day or night, evening, or whatever, wherever you are, whatever planet you're on, because I know they're out there listening to us. So talking to you, Rigelians.
Hey. Apple core.